My name is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone, and this is the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa webinar of Spainguru. A little bit about Spainguru. Our objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014, and we have wonderful reviews on Trustpilot and on Google. More than 240 reviews, 5-star reviews, 99% of them. And you can use Spainguru.es for absolutely free. You can join our weekly newsletter that I send every Monday, where I feature the top discussions in our Facebook groups and Reddits and community. You can watch our YouTube channel with almost 1,000 videos, many of them about the digital nomad visa. Read our blog post with almost 2,000 articles. And as I said, a huge community with an aggregated total of 150,000 members, where the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa Facebook group is about 17,000 members, so extremely big and active. And here you can join it anytime. I highly recommend you doing so. You can find other people's experiences, recommendations, and so much more. And if you need professional advice, you can find immigration experts with knowledge about the digital nomad visa, with a big experience from applications from within Spain or from any Spanish consulate abroad. Definitely on Spainguru.es. I have personally vetted all my partners, and many of them I have used them personally. You can also find tax advisors, financial planners, and services like visa compliant health insurances or residency compliant health insurance, medical certificates, sworn translations, Apostilles services in the US and in the UK, bank accounts as well, money transfer services, property rentals, mortgages, mortgage brokers if you plan to purchase property in Spain, and more than 100 personally vetted services. All that on Spainguru.es. It is absolutely free to go around and check it out. And the objectives for this webinar, I hope that by the end of it, you'll understand the key changes for the DNV in Spain in 2025, step-by-step requirements and how to meet them, documentation as well, and what taxes and social security contributions would apply, depending on how you apply for this visa, the renewal process, and what's changed, and common mistakes and delays that you should avoid. And this is the way I structure this webinar. It's a little timeline with, first, we're going to start with some terminology that we're going to use all across the webinar, and an update for the 2025 year, and requirements like more formal requirements, application checklist, taxes, and related, and the renewal process. Okay. Now let's talk about the terminology. First, UGE, Unidad de Grandes Empresas. This is the government unit that processes the DNV applications, and we're going to see that they are not very consistent, but it is much more streamlined if you apply in Spain directly at the UGE online rather than applying at the Spanish consulate. And it also has some advantages doing so. Then the Apostille. The Apostille is an international certification. There's a Hague Convention with more than 100 countries that are part of it. Basically, you certify, the local authorities certify that their local official document is valid to be presented at other authorities from another Hague Convention member. How you do that? Getting an apostille. Okay, so for example, an FBI background check from the US is not valid by itself, but if you get an apostille, a federal apostille of this FBI background check issued by the USA, will be valid when you present it with Spanish authorities, okay, because both countries are part of the Hague Convention, okay. Of course, you need to sworn translate it. Then sworn translator, traductor jurado, are a special kind of translator, okay. And the only institution that appoints this kind of translators is the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They give a unique registration number, okay? So all documents that are not in Spanish, official documents, you have to check the list, which ones need to have a sworn translation versus some that need just like simple translation. I'm going to give you that. But the ones that need sworn translations is very, very important that you use a sworn translator. And of course, you can find recommended sworn translators on Spainguru.es. Then there is the A1 certificate, which is the certificate of coverage of Social Security from the UK. But then there is also the certificate of coverage from USA. Okay. Basically, the A1 is the code for this kind of certificate from the UK. But in the States, it doesn't have the name A1. It's called Certificate of Coverage or Social Security Certificate of Coverage, okay? And that certificate proves that you are paying Social Security in your origin country. So you can avoid paying it to Spanish Social Security. Autonomo. Autonomo is the fiscal or tax figure of a contractor in Spain, okay? This is the legal status. So if you're applying as a 1099 contractor from the States, and you'll have to become an autonomo in Spain. And therefore, you're going to have some tax obligations that are particular to the autonomo figure. As I mentioned, certificate of coverage, A1 is the same. more or less. And then there is the padrón o empadronamiento, which is a municipal registration at the city hall where you are planning to live, okay, where you obtain a certificate that proves your address in that city, okay. Normally, it is valid for 3 months, right? And it is required for visa renewals and various administrative tasks. You don't need it if you're going to apply for the DNB originally in Spain, okay, or anywhere else. You don't need it, right? But then you will need it, for example, to obtain the tarjeta de identidad extranjero, 90% of cases. And talking about it, the tarjeta de identidad extranjero, this is the TIE card, which is the plastic card that has your face on it that proves your immigration status in Spain, okay? And for that, you need to attend a police station or foreign office where they're going to take your fingerprints, receive your documentation, and they're going to issue this residency card, okay? Now, let's talk about the news of 2025, because this visa is very recent, so it's changing all the time. First of all, most important, W-2 employees from the United States are now digital nomad visa eligible. These are great news because there was a problem before with the certificate of coverage issued by the states. Spain's immigration office, UGE, now accepts the certificate of coverage issued by USA, listing Spanish home addresses, which is a game changer. Okay, before they wouldn't accept Spanish home addresses in the certificate of coverage. Now they're doing so. Therefore, W-2 employees or employees working for non-Spanish companies from the States are being accepted. Who qualifies for a certificate of coverage? W-2 employees from U.S. companies working remotely from Spain up to 5 years must apply with their employer with the U.S. company details, proof of remote arrangement. So it is the employer in the States that needs to start the process to obtain the certificate of coverage. That is taking about 4 to 8 weeks. The certificate of coverage helps avoid Spanish Social Security contributions. Who may not qualify? Self-employed or S Corp owners often don't meet the Social Security's US-based business criteria. And if you are if you own your own company, owning more than 25% of a company can trigger legal and tax issues in Spain. Okay, so be careful with that. And here's the how-to guide or steps in order to obtain the certificate of coverage in the States. First, you gather the info, and then you submit the application. You can do it online or sending like snail mail as well. You wait for processing, as we said, 4 to 8 weeks, and you receive and verify the certificate of coverage, and then you will include it in the DNB application. I have an article about this if you're interested in knowing more. Read Spainguru.es blog posts, or I can send you a link if you write to me at hello@spainguru.es. I will write it in the chat box. Okay, now let's move forward. Major changes to the visa, the update in 2025. What's different now? More documents now require apostilles, especially company certificates. There are stricter checks for business owners to prove real company activity. Okay, so they're trying to avoid people who buy companies off the shelf just to apply to for the digital nomad visa, like zombie companies without activity. Professional experience must be backed by official evidence. Okay, now they're getting stricter with that. The 24% tax rate linked to the special tax regime called Beckham Law only applies in specific cases. This is important because many people thought that if you apply as a contractor in Spain for the digital nomad visa, you could be eligible for this special tax regime, which is not true. Only if you apply as an employee and other conditions that you need to fulfill. UGE decisions can be inconsistent at best and be prepared to adapt. Renewals are now treated nearly the same as new applications. So you need to be very meticulous and organized and prepared in advance to get all the documentation. Let's talk about apostilles and legalizations, okay? Before, only a few documents needed apostilles, but now it's different, okay? Company registration certificates must be apostilled. Tax or social security reports used as work proof require apostille. Marriage, birth, or civil partnership certificates, if applicable. So if you're applying with your spouse or with children or with your legal partner, will need apostilles, okay? This was always like this. Documents from outside of Spain must be legalized. We're talking about official documents, okay, issued by governments or states, must be legalized or apostilled. And the translations for this kind of documents need to be sworn translations, okay, when they're not in Spanish. For example, if you're applying with documents from Colombia or Mexico, countries where official language is Spanish and the documents in Spanish itself, then you, of course, don't need to sworn translate it to Spanish, okay? Tip, check requirements for your country. Early processing times vary. So you need to prepare several weeks, even months in advance when you are going to prepare these documentations. Even if you're applying from Spain, you have to allow months to get the documentations ready and within the validity window, because these documents have a validity window and they need to be valid at the time of application. or submission of the documents. There is extra scrutiny for business owners. Okay, authorities will now require proof of your companies is active and legitimate. Off-the-shelf inactive companies are likely to be rejected. So you may need to submit company tax returns, invoices and contracts, proof of business expenses or investment, and evidence of clients and services delivered. So you need to prove that this is not a zombie company. Okay, if your company has your name or is family-owned, scrutiny increases even more. And for small self-owned companies, you'll need to prove your ownership, activity, and client relationships. So it is expected from now on in 2025 that you submit more documentation in these regards. About proving work experience. So you can qualify without a degree for this visa, okay? But in this case, you must show at least 3 years of relevant professional experience. So what's expected? A detailed letter from former employers or clients where it is outlined your role, responsibilities, and dates, okay? So everything needs to match. Official proof is now required, such as Social Security records, okay? And this is not for every case, but many lawyers, experts in this procedure, say that sometimes, depending on the way that you're applying as an employee or as a contractor, then the UGE expects some more official records from authorities like Social Security Office, okay? In the case of UK, HMRC, in the case of the US, SSA 750, okay? But not always, okay? But check your specific case when you talk with the DNB experts. Make sure that this is you talk about this, okay? Or a detailed report from your current or past companies for 1099, okay? Tax documents, for example, for 1099s or P60s in the UK, and self-employment pages, and invoices and bank statements tied to your freelance work, okay? So all supporting documents must match your CV or curriculum vitae and current job role, okay? So experience must in general, summarizing, experience must now be backed by official government documents, ideally Social Security, work-life history, professional certificates from authorities, okay? And if it's not possible, provide a detailed employer report. So you build your case, you make it the strongest that you can, okay? So you have a strong case for proving your work experience versus a weak case, okay? So the more official documentation that you can provide supporting your case, the higher the chances are that you're going to be accepted with experience versus degree. Now let's talk about we mentioned a little bit about taxes, and we're going to talk specifically about taxes later on in the presentation, but it's important to address that there's been a lot of confusion, especially during the first months, that many people thought that they were going to benefit from a flat rate of 24% effective tax rate on their income if they apply for digital nomad visa, regardless of their status. But the truth is that this special tax regime only applies for employees and not business owners or freelancers, okay? Those earning approximately 60,000 euros annually of taxable income makes sense that they apply for this special tax regime, because if you make less, there is an extra administrative and tax, let's say, burden, okay? And you are not allowed to get allowances or deductions for families, etc. So basically, if you make less than this threshold, you're going to be probably paying less tax with the ordinary income tax regime, okay? That has progressive rates starting at 19% up to 47%, right? So if you make less than 60K, it's probably not a good idea to apply for the special tax regime. Just have that in mind, but always check with a professional expert tax advisor who knows about the Beckham law and the tax treaties between your country and Spain, right? And another eligibility problem: people working for a company that they own are probably not eligible for Beckham law, right? Most applicants pay standard progressive income taxes. If you're self-employed or autonomo or 1099, you will also pay Social Security contributions, right? You will pay that in Spain with Spanish authorities. So you're going to be paying income tax and you're going to be paying Social Security contributions, and all that adds up to what you get on a net basis in your pocket every month. So remember that there's been misleading headlines talking about 15% tax. That was actually for companies, or 24% tax rates, okay? And people have sometimes these expectations about taxes. So conclusion, okay? Always check with an expert DNB immigration expert and with an expert DNB tax expert, okay? Or a company that has both perspectives so that both things are aligned, and also develop a long-term strategy for your stay in Spain. This is also extremely important, right? Because some people concentrate on, oh, I need the digital nomad visa, let's get the visa, and then don't know what to do when you renew. If you plan to stay for a long term, you have to prepare also for all those events, because there are requirements for all those modifications or transitions into different types of visa. So going with immigration experts is a key if you plan to stay for the mid or long term in Spain, okay? And all those, you can find them on Spainguru. Yes, and believe me, I'm not trying to sell you this service. I'm just telling you what I see that people actually face, like unwanted surprises, and they want to stay in Spain, and unfortunately they need to leave because they didn't plan ahead enough, okay? So yeah. Now let's talk about, and we mentioned that UGE could be inconsistent at best or unpredictable, okay? So just a quick moment. Over 60% of you watching right now aren't subscribed. That's a lot of people getting value without hitting that button. If my videos have helped you understand Spain's immigration process, visas, or life here even just once, please subscribe now. I'm working hard to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, and your click truly makes a difference. Thanks so much. Now, let's keep going. Expect the following, right? Requirements and interpretations can vary between caseworkers. So depending who is reviewing your case may take one decision or another. And this is probably rule number one in Spanish bureaucracy, right? And it happens to you that you have two lines and two workers, okay? And one will tell you A, you just skip the line, you go to the other one, and boom, you get the opposite outcome, okay? And this is rule number one of Spanish bureaucracy. There are people who apply with certain documentation for the DNB, they get rejected, they apply again, and they get approved, just like that, okay? And this is with UGE from Spain, online, with a streamlined process, okay? So expect that level of inconsistency, okay? So rejections may happen even with strong applications. Appeals are usually time-consuming and not recommended, so it is always recommended to apply very early, okay? So you have enough legal time in Spain, okay, or in the Schengen area, so that you can apply again in case of rejection, okay? So reapplying with clearer or organized documents often works better, and the timing matters. Decisions around holidays may be stricter or rushed, because a lot of the civil servants take holidays. They still continue to serve and to give you decisions on your digital nomad visa submissions and everything. But the truth is that they are understaffed. So things, that has an impact as well. Okay, so holidays is summer months and Christmas times, basically. Now let's talk about the formal requirements for this visa. And the core eligibility criteria for digital nomad visa. First, money matters. Okay, in order to qualify, you need to make at least 2,763 euros per month. Euros, not dollars or anything else. It must be euros. And this is before tax and expenses. Okay, so this is gross value, right? So this is also a quite asked questions. You need to work remotely for a non-Spanish company and have non-Spanish clients, okay? So you can have up to 20% of your income coming from Spanish clients, but no more, okay? And of course, you don't have to have Spanish income. You can have 0% Spanish income, right? You have to have either a university degree or at least 3 years of relevant professional experience. We talked about the experience now that faces more scrutiny than earlier. Provide a clean criminal record for the past 5 years, okay, from all the countries or jurisdictions where you live outside of Spain. So if you live in 3 countries, you need to get the police checks, records for those 3 countries. Prove your employer or clients have existed for at least 1 year. Confirm your work is performed remotely using digital tools. So not every single profession or type of work will qualify for the digital nomad visa, right? Now, let's go deeper into the income requirements for applicants and families, okay? Because you can also apply with dependents as well, okay? And how do you calculate this? First of all, one applicant will be, the minimum threshold for the financial requirements is 200% of the annual minimum salary in Spain in 14 payments, okay? So you have to calculate 14 pays, okay? Of the minimum salary. Basically, the minimum salary in 14 pays in Spain is 33. It is like 200% of the 14 months payments of the minimum salary in Spain is 33,152 euros. Converted to 12 months, you need to be making 2,763 euros. Okay. Then, if you're applying with your partner, with your married partner, or your married couple, then the second one has to make 75% of that value, okay? Therefore, the yearly income has to grows to 45,584, and the monthly income needs to be now with a couple is 3,799. Okay, and then for every next dependent, for example, children, okay, you have to add 25%, okay, of that threshold. So basically, for a family of 3 is over 4,000 euros, and for a family of 4 is nearly 4,500 euros. Okay, this is how you calculate it. All right, and that's why those numbers are pretty strange, because they're based on percentages. Now, the income requirements for applicants and family. Some clarifications. We mentioned the amounts are gross, so before tax and expenses. Okay, which is good. If self-employed, income must be shown before deducting costs. Savings may help support your case, but cannot replace consistent income. Okay, so there is no written rule about this, but many lawyers say that no more than 10% of the total funding that you are proving can be savings. Okay, and authorities are a bit more lenient to accept more percentage of your funding being savings if you're applying with family members. Okay, but if you're applying by yourself, like, has to be active income, not savings, basically. Income must be documented through contracts, payslips, invoices, and bank statements. And as I said, well, maximum 20% of your income can be from Spain, okay? But it can also be 0%, okay? Your application checklist, okay? What you need to submit. We're going to talk about documentation now, okay? Papers, right? So to apply for the DNB, you need, first, a signed letter from your employer or main client confirming that you're in a certain role, a certain job title, job description, pay in euros. You need to transform everything to euros. Remote work authorization from Spain, and confirmation that the arrangement is long-term. Okay. Then your contract, ideally without a fixed end date. And why ideally? Because if it's without a fixed date, then the authorities will grant you a visa up to 3 years. Okay, a residence permit for up to 3 years. And this happens if you apply from Spain. If you apply from a Spanish consulate, the maximum they can give you is 1 year, right? So this is one of the advantages of applying from Spain without a fixed end date contract. Because if you apply with a 1-year contract, they will give you 1 year residency permit. The last 3 months of stamped and or signed personal bank statements showing income, last 3 months of pay slips or invoices, company certificate now with Apostle, proving your employer or client has existed for at least 1 year, proof of qualifications, or instead 3 years of relevant experience. Everything needs to match. So underline the word relevant experience, under a certain role and job description, criminal background check for the countries where you live in the past 5 years, and signed declaration. Private health insurance in some cases. So we're going to talk about this because exactly for if you apply as a contractor, as an autonomo, then you don't need that health insurance, private health insurance. But we're going to talk about that because there's a trick. There's an important thing that you need to have in mind if you're not going to get a private health insurance. Then passport, application form, payment received, and photo. Each document must be sworn translated, official documents, okay? That's to Spanish when they're not in Spanish, and Apostle, if applicable, okay? So yeah, have an article with all the documents that need to be apostles and all the documents that need to be sworn translated, and also generally translated, with ChatGPT or Google or a simple normal translator, okay? Now, applying as an employee, let's focus in W-2 and A1 certificates inside, or certificate of coverage, okay? If you're employed by a foreign company, here's what you need to know. First, your employer must confirm your remote status and your job duties. A W-2 form can support your income, but it's not enough by itself. You may need an A1 certificate or Social Security certificate of coverage to prove you're paying Social Security in your home country, okay? But basically, you will need it, okay? Otherwise, the company needs to open a company in Spain, okay? And pay Social Security for you. Now, without an A1 coverage, as I said, or certificate of coverage, Spain may require your employer to register for Spanish Social Security. And this is quite expensive, and not many people do it, okay? But certain companies already have companies in Spain, right? And that can also be valid, okay? And you need a signed letter confirming no impact on Spain's labor market is also helpful, right? So this is some experienced lawyers who also add this letter just to make your case stronger, even. And here's a comparison. If you have the options or possibilities to apply as an employee, okay, with a Social Security certificate from your country versus converting yourself into a autonomo or a contractor, then it's important that you compare these two possibilities or pathways because they have strong impact. in your future tax obligations, social security obligations, and potentially eligibility for the Beckham law special tax regime, etc., etc. Right? So yeah, check out this table here. I'm gonna upload the video. I'm gonna send you the link if you wanna spend some more time analyzing this. Later on, you can do it on YouTube, watching the video. Okay, but definitely this is important that you compare those two figures if you have the possibility or versatility to apply using any of those two figures, okay, as an employee versus as a contractor. Now let's talk about certificate of coverage for US, Canada, and other countries. In the United States, you request a Social Security 101 or a 102 form, and you must show that you remain covered under the US Social Security. For Canada, you request a certificate of coverage from Service Canada. In the EU or associated countries like Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and the UK, as a former EU member, you can use an A1 certificate from your home country, Social Security Agency. You will say like, well, of course, the digital nomad visa is for non-EU passport holders. If you were working in Germany, for example, well, you have to apply for the digital nomad visa and using an A1 certificate from Germany in this case, right? The certificate must cover the full duration of your initial visa. This is important. So when this expires, for example, in the UK, the A1 certificate, at the most, it can be issued for 2 years. So when it expires, your residency will also expire, right? So this is what the UGE will be looking at. So when this happens, you may have to register as self-employed in Spain, okay, or follow other pathways. Very important, so that you continue to be legal resident in Spain on an uninterrupted basis, because this is a key requirement to obtain the long-term residency permit after 5 years of legal residence in Spain, which is a fantastic permit, okay, which is, let's say, grants you work permit also for Spanish companies. You are almost as a Spanish citizen, okay? Of course, don't quote me on that, but more or less you have the same rights without too many requirements. Make sure it's apostilled and translated if needed. Okay, this is we're talking about certificate of coverage. So and also plan that obtaining it takes time. Takes time. Actually, in the UK, it was taking several months. Okay, and in the US, 4 to 8 weeks. So be careful with that. In the UK, it was taking about 5 months to obtain, if I'm not wrong, lately. Now, employers paying social security in Spain, is that a viable option? Well, actually, it is. It is a viable option, but it is quite unlikely, okay? Because it's complex and often costly, right? So many companies don't want to do it. And most prefer remote contractors or consultants rather than direct Spanish payroll compliance. So maybe you can negotiate with them that you turn into a contractor and you invoice them from Spain, and you are the one who is dealing with the social security and tax authorities in Spain. This is what usually happens, that people switch to that self-employed status, okay? So it's important to explore those options with your employer to see if it's a valid pathway for both of you. Now, if you decide to go self-employed, another common question is like, how and when I register as self-employed in Spain, okay? You need to register as autonomo, okay? That will mean that you will pay basically 2 things, okay? Social Security in Spain, and you will have to file regular tax declarations, quarterly and annually, like everyone. But contractors in Spain, autonomos, also have to file on a quarterly basis, okay? For your income and for your VAT, okay? The VAT, normally you only apply it for Spanish customers alone, okay? So if they're outside of Spain, you normally won't apply the VAT, right? Therefore, the VAT declarations will be just like filings, but you will not collect VAT or pay back VAT to the authorities normally as a digital nomad, okay? Because as we said, only maximum 20% of your income can come from Spanish customers, right? So it's not that a big problem, but you need to file it, right? And timing matters. So there's 2 pathways, let's say. If you obtain your digital nomad visa at Spanish consulate, don't register as an autonomo until you enter Spain with your digital nomad, with your let's say approved digital nomad visa. Or if you enter Spain, you apply for it, don't apply for autonomo until your visa is approved, okay? You'll have 30 days to complete the process after arrival, okay? If you enter with a granted visa. And the rules say that you need to register in any of those cases, to register as soon as possible without establishing a clear time, okay? Now, the expenses that you have to expect to pay is a monthly social security contributions that starts normally at around 80, 90 euros, depending where you live in Spain, okay, for the first year. And then it can range around 250 euros to 590 euros, depending how much you made during the first year. There are a few regions that have, let's say, a scheme where you can get paid back the first year. Okay, for example, Andalusia. I had that scheme. I'm based in Malaga, in Andalusia, and they paid me the first year back on the second year, okay, by applying for this subsidy, let's say. And also Madrid has this scheme, and many other regions have their own different schemes to support first-time autonomos. So it's something to look at, okay? And some expenses, accounting fees, all right? So this is optional. You can become an accountant yourself and file all this directly, of course. But I'm telling you, like, even as a Spanish speaker, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been doing business for many, many years in Spain, and I'm telling you that it's highly, highly risky and difficult to understand and to keep up with the changes, okay? So I highly recommend you hiring a professional via a gestor. You know, I can recommend you online gestores on Spainguru.es, especially focus on autonomos, but definitely use a professional. That's my recommendation in order for doing these filings, because there's a lot going on, and you know, you will spend like a long time in your month and energy in doing this. Now, going self-employed. This is also another question that was asked in Spainguru's community this week. Do I need a physical TA card, the tarjeta de identidad extranjero, or residency card in order to register as autónomo, or can I register directly after the DNB approval, right? So this is also a common mistake that many people think, that you need to get your plastic residency card in order to apply as autónomo. And why they make this mistake, or they have this misunderstanding? Because many gestores or tax advisors, let's say, or accountants, think that you need to have one. Okay, so they get this confusion, right? But it can take weeks or even months to obtain this residency card, right? And if you don't register as autónomo, you are in bad position. Okay, so be careful with this. You don't need a TA card to register as autónomo. Okay, many gestores aren't aware of this. Okay, but 100% you can do it. All right, so it's very, very important. And most of DNB holders register as autónomo without having their TA, and they have to. Sometimes you can get the TA very quickly, okay? There miracles happen, okay? But honestly, it's a miracle. Can a criminal record affect your application? And yes, background checks are mandatory, okay? And you must provide a criminal record certificate for every country you lived in the past 5 years. Even minor offenses can trigger delays or rejections. And what the authorities will generally look for is serious criminal convictions, okay? Fraud, drug-related offenses, or repeated offenses, all right? So it's important. If you have serious criminal convictions, you know, you can go in those different countries where you had those convictions. There are expungement processes or processes to delete those records, all right? Because enough time has passed and those records can be, you know, taken away or whatever under those countries' laws. So if you're in this situation, first of all, get legal help. Second of all, try to expunge those records before applying in Spain, because it could be a straight rejection just for this, okay? In some cases, older or minor infractions may be overlooked, okay? Like people with like drinking, driving under the influence or smoking pot several years ago, stuff like that may be considered to be small or minor offenses. So yeah, consult with a legal expert with experience, okay, with having had customers that apply with this kind of records. And you also sign a declaration confirming that no pending criminal charges are happening at the time of application, all right? So always apostille and strong translate your police check, right? Remember, there is a Q&A session at the end after this presentation. And if you think, and if you have to leave earlier for some reason, and you think that the information that I'm sharing with you today is valuable and can help you and others, or you learn something new, make sure to leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a button there on the top green bar with a red button. It will redirect you to Trustpilot, and in 5 seconds you can leave there a nice review, and it will really, really help me a lot and help others find this content. Thank you so much, and let's continue. Do you need a degree? Alternatives that work. Well, we mentioned that either with experience or with a degree, okay? So university degree is one way to qualify, but it's not the only path, right? You have one option for this option of showing degree, okay, or education. University diploma in a relevant field for the position that you're applying, for the role that you're applying, must be legalized and officially translated. Degrees must be a graduate or postgraduate level from recognized institutions and related to your current job. So, okay, they have to be related. That's important. So people say like, sometimes they have several degrees. Okay, they say like I have 2, 3 degrees. There's been cases there with, you need to apply with the one that is related to the position that you are applying. The option 2, as we said, at least 3 years of professional experience related to the remote work you will be doing in Spain, and supported with documents that we've been through, okay, already, that we mentioned in the updates for 2025. Okay, remember that they must clearly align with your current role and visa application. Everything must match. How to prove freelance or contract experience? If you're applying as a freelance or contractor, you need to prove your experience, and this is very important, by submitting a detailed CV aligned with your application, simple translation, okay, to Spanish, no strong translation. Include client letters confirming work history, scopes, and timelines. Provide official documents such as social security records from your home country, tax filings, invoices and proof of payment via bank statements or receipts, okay, and organize the documents by client or year for clarity. And sometimes you need to also submit a letter explaining how all this is structured to make it easier for the officer reviewing your case, because sometimes this information can be quite chaotic. Consistency is important. Your job you're doing now must relate directly and match to the experience shown, okay? So generally, the more formal and verifiable your experience is, the stronger your application becomes. Can you bring your family? It's going to talk about the rules for spouses and partners, okay? Yes, of course, you can bring your immediate family members, okay, not cousins, for example, and they can join your application as dependents, okay? But of course, you will need to include extra documentation, okay, for spouse or legally registered partner, for children under 18 and adult children. These are your children that are over 18, and you can also bring parents, okay, who depend on you, right? To include the partners or spouse, you must provide new, let's say, original copy, okay, within validity period, of the marriage certificate or civil partnership certificate, okay, always apostilled by the authority that issued, and sworn translated if it's not in Spanish. Proof of shared finances or cohabitation in the case you are applying with non-married couples, okay, so if unmarried or as stable partners, okay, so there are these two categories. So unmarried couple but are legal partners, so you have a document saying that you're a legal partner, okay, this is generally accepted by Spanish authorities. Or if you don't have the legal partnership documents, you would be considered to be stable partners if you prove that your relationship is stable, okay? So you will need to provide documents proving cohabitation for at least 1 year, okay, for example, in order to support this, lease agreements, joint bills, or shared bank accounts. Or if you have children together, then maybe the 1 year cohabitation is not necessary, okay? Just by proving that you have children together, that's more than enough for the authorities to understand that you're an unmarried couple, okay? So yeah, of course, have in mind that the financial threshold goes up for every dependent that you bring. You know, the partner, you are 200% of the minimum salary in 14 payments, your spouse 75%, and then each dependent is 25% of that value. We've been through that earlier on. And then talking about bringing children, other dependents, and elderly parents. And let me take this off so we can see better. So if you want to include this type of dependents, you have, first of all, different cases, no? Let's start with minor children, okay, the most common one. You will need a new original copy of birth certificate, of apostille and sworn translated when necessary. Proof of financial support and school plans is helpful, okay? Not required, but helpful. And if they are adult children, so children of over 18 years old, but under 26, there is these two segmentations for adult children. You must show full-time studies, financial dependence, and proof of living with parents, okay? So that they are not married, okay? So they are not outside of your family unit. Helpful certificate of single status in order to prove this, and proof of not working, for example, for social security, okay? Adult children that are over 26 years old, okay, are only allowed if they are medically are incapably dependent. In order to support this, you need to provide official incapacity documentation. For adopted children, you will need to include a court ruling confirming legal guardianship or adoption. And for parents-in-laws, they must prove real stable financial or physical dependence. So we're talking about parents or in-laws, okay, both. So you need to show full support via bank transfers or medical dependency. And all these cases are assessed individually, okay? And it will always also require a notarized declaration, okay? And you will also have to have them in mind as dependents. Therefore, the financial threshold also increases, okay? So that's very important that you do your calculations, okay? There is also the possibility that family members apply later, okay? Not with the main applicant, right? So in this case, extra documentation will be required. For self-employed applicants, something important to have in mind is that you must be fully registered as autonomo before your additional dependents join you in your application, okay? So this can take time and you need to plan accordingly, okay? Now, we mentioned this a little bit before. Let's focus in private health insurance. Do you need it? Right? Depending on how you apply for this digital nomad visa. First of all, if you're covered by a certificate of coverage, okay, or A1, insurance, like private health insurance, is not required, okay, because you will be able to use or have access to the public healthcare system in Spain under the agreement of those certificate of coverage for Social Security in your home countries, right? If you register as self-employed in Spain, you're automatically covered by Spanish healthcare, okay, because you're paying Social Security, you have access to public healthcare. Therefore, you don't need for the application of the digital nomad visa, okay? But if neither of these conditions apply, you will need a private health insurance, okay, that has no co-payments or deductibles, that offer full coverage in Spain, and is valid for the entire duration of your visa, minimum 1 year, okay? However, and this is a big thing, okay, if you plan to stay in Spain for the mid or long term, okay, and potentially get your long-term residency, okay, also known as permanent residency, after 5 years of residency in Spain, you have to be extremely careful about not getting a private health insurance, okay? And this is a quote of a post that I wrote on Spainguru's DNB group. If you're aiming for long-term residency after 5 years, it's crucial to have uninterrupted full coverage with no co-pays from day one, okay? So if you're applying as a contractor, 1099 or autonomo, often will face a gap between visa approval and the start of public healthcare, which could make you ineligible for the long-term residency later, okay? Why? Because your residency officially starts when your digital nomad visa is granted, okay? So what happens between that grant and when you register yourself as autonomo and you have public healthcare system? You have a coverage gap because you are resident, but you're not covered by anything, okay? So that can be a denial or rejection reason when you apply for the long-term residency 5 years after, believe it or not, okay? So be very careful about this. So to stay covered and compliant, I recommend getting private health insurance for at least your first year in Spain, okay? Then you can sort out or, design your strategy so you don't get any health compliant health coverage, okay, and an uninterrupted legal residency, okay, and you have also minimum stay requirements. But this is very important. Stay covered and compliant for the full length of those 5 years before you apply for the long-term residency, okay? And of course, if you then turn into autonomo and you pay your Social Security for 5 years, you are covered by public healthcare system. You don't need your private health insurance, okay? Or you can maybe, downgrade it. It doesn't have to be full coverage. It can be maybe co-payment system, whatever, etc. But the first year, highly recommended, okay? And also, now that we mentioned the long-term residency, there's also a minimum stay requirement that you need to observe during those 5 years, which is you cannot be out of Spain, not Schengen or Europe. You cannot be out of Spain more than 10 months in a 5-year period, okay? Those 10 months don't need to be consecutive, but they cannot be more than 6 together, okay? Yeah, and of course, people ask, like, but what if I go to a Schengen country, etc.? Well, Schengen is a 29 countries group in Europe that is internally borderless, but controls can happen, okay? And if they control you, they will actually know that you're outside of Spain because the rule talks about Spain for the long-term residency. So careful with that, right? And if you need a digital nomad visa, private health insurance, or residency compliant health insurance, I highly recommend you working with my recommended exclusive agent, Carlos Blanco, who is exclusive agent for Adeslas, who is not only a health insurance agent, but he's also an expert immigration lawyer, okay? He can also help you with the digital nomad visa application if you need as well, but also will understand, okay, about this application and the timings. And he can also offer start date extensions of the policy, which is something that many companies don't offer you. So, you don't have to, let's say, pay for months that you're not using, okay? And you can be quite flexible. So yeah, definitely, contacting him and asking for a non-binding quote is absolutely free and absolutely non-binding. So you don't lose anything by asking him for a quote, so that you understand how that could be if you want to have private health insurance. Now, let's leave that thing and let's move into some extras, okay? Some important details to avoid headaches and to make this smoother. Entry stamps, apostilles, and translations, okay? First, passport entry stamp. It is required if applying from within Spain, okay? So you need to prove that you are in Spain. Even if you're applying online to the UGE, you will need to show your passport, scan passport, and you have to see that you are in Spain at the time of application, right? Now, there's going to be a new system that apparently will start in October, where passport stamps will stop being used. It's going to be like a digitalized. We're going to look at your eyes, fingerprints, and everything. And then passport stamps will not be valid anymore, but it will have all this automatically. But we still have to see how that works later on. Okay. And if you enter Spain via another Schengen country, it's important to get a declaración de entrada, which is a one-page document that you get signed at the police station. Okay. So you make sure that you have that document, because if you enter from another Schengen country, then you are not going to get a stamp in your passport, because there's no immigration authorities when you enter Spain. So the police station will have to stamp you that, okay? But you have to be proactive about it. Have an article about that if you're interested, right? Next, apostilles. Needed for official documents from abroad. We said criminal records, birth certificates, company documents, okay? Be careful with that. And then sworn translations. All non-Spanish documents must be translated, okay, by a certified translator. Not all the official ones need sworn, not all the documents need sworn translation. Some of them simple translation we mentioned. The CV should match your documented experience and current job and has a simple translation. An application form must be fully completed and signed. Any errors may cause the delays or rejections. Okay, so everything has to be perfect. Pantene, as people say in the States. Topping up income with savings. Is it allowed? Savings can support, as we said, maximum 20%. In the craziest cases, okay, of the total income that you're showing or funding, but it will never substitute regular income. So digital nomad visa is based on active ongoing earnings, but if you're showing substantial savings, it can also strengthen your case. Okay, so especially if you are slightly below the thresholds, okay, and if you are bringing multiple dependents, and if you're self-employed and you have very strong variations in your monthly income, okay, so yes, this is something that you need to make sure that you use it cautiously, okay, the savings to complete your funding threshold. And you need to show bank documents, and authorities, in Spain, they love wet ink stamps that are not always possible, and with foreign banks. Here's very common. I go to my app and I download a certificate or bank statement from my bank. And at the end, even if it's completely digital, there's an image of a stamp by the bank, okay, with a little signature, which is obviously digital. It's not but this is what the authorities are searching for, right? So many experienced DNB lawyers want to see those stamps, okay, because sometimes the authorities want those stamps and those wet ink signatures. So if you can get them, definitely it will make a difference, okay? What counts as savings? Bank statements with your name, fixed-term deposits or investment accounts, proof of consistent ownership, and access, all right? Because sometimes, yes, the access has to be liquid. You have to be, the funds need to be liquid. They need to be readily accessible without any penalties, okay? And I'm not 100% sure, but I think you can even use credit from your credit card, as long as, you provide a certificate from the bank saying that, yes, this person has access, full access, straight away to all this credit as well. So, yes, but don't quote me on that 100%, but it's something that potentially we'll need to add for the next webinar and check it out. When should you register as autonomo? Okay, as we said, if you plan to be self-employed in Spain, you need to be careful when you register, all right? And so you get your visa. If you haven't gotten your visa yet at a consulate and you arrive to Spain, never register before your approved visa. You have 30 days after entering Spain, okay, to apply for your TA card, for your residency card, if you already enter Spain with a granted visa, okay? Or you have to immediately register as an autonomo once you receive your visa granting from Spain, okay? So after you have gotten your autonomo registration, you will have to also register with the Seguridad Social in order to pay your Social Security, and with the Agencia Tributaria, which is the IRS or tax office, with the Spanish tax agency as well. Okay, so be careful with those timings, because if you don't do it soon enough, or if you do it too early, it could affect your visa and tax residency. So be careful with that, and always observe and have a mid to long-term strategy if you plan to stay in Spain. Okay, so there are no gaps and everything is covered and perfectly designed in terms of timings. Okay, now we mentioned that you can apply for this visa. Not all the visas can do this. Okay, for example, non-lucrative visa only from consulates abroad, but the digital nomad visa has this option. You can apply from a consulate abroad, or you can apply from within Spain. Okay, if it's a consulate abroad, it has to be from the consulate where you're a legal resident. Okay, it cannot be any consulate. You need to be legal resident within the jurisdiction of that consulate, right? But in any case, if you apply from Spain, there are Pros and cons. The pros: you don't need to wait in your home country. Okay, you can enter Spain as a tourist as long as you have the permission to enter in the Schengen area, because not all the passports enable you to enter the Schengen area for 90 days in a 180 days rolling period. Sometimes if you hold, for example, if you're a Filipino, you need a Schengen permit to enter the Schengen area before applying from Spain. So that's why most Filipinos apply from Manila in Philippines, okay? Because they don't have straight away permission to enter the Schengen area to apply from within Spain. So check that, okay? So be careful with that. Then another pro is that there's faster appointment scheduling. You can apply directly online through the UGE portal, no consulate delays. You will need digital signature, okay? So either you get it before doing your application, or you use someone who has a digital signature, because you need to sign legally documents when you submit, okay? So the digital signatures are called clave, okay, or certificado de firma. Streamlined process, more or less, okay? The consulate requirements will vary much more than the UGE. There is greater control over your move, okay? If you move to Spain, you have already, housing. So, when you arrive to Spain, you will already have gotten schools or logistics while waiting approval, so you can move on, with your settling in Spain once you do it. And there's going to be an easier family reunification later, okay? Remember that if you're applying to apply as a contractor, your family can only be put together in your application after you have registered as autonomo, okay? And also probably the most important perk, okay, or pro of applying from Spain is that if you apply with an indefinite contract, you can get a residency permit of up to 3 years instead of 1 in the consulates. Now, the cons: there's a strict 90-day window, which is the 90 and 180-day rolling period, in order to apply, right? The entry proof is required. You need a stamped passport, okay, or police registration. As I said, I have an article about how to fill the declaración de entrada if you enter via another Schengen country, okay, by road or by airplane, doesn't matter. And remember that the visa will start immediately, right? If you apply from Spain, the day the visa is granted, that's when your residency starts, and that's when you have to have full healthcare coverage, okay? So for applying for the long-term visa in 5 years later, okay? So be careful with that. You cannot choose when the visa starts. So you get your decision, and if the visa is granted, boom, that's when your residency starts, okay? And some risk if it's denied. There's no appeal process within Spain, let's say. If you are out of days and you were denied, you may need to leave and reapply from your home country, right? So that can also be a con, right? I have asked people in the DNV group, Facebook group, about where they chose to apply from, and the vast majority, almost 80%, apply from within Spain. And the timeline would be: first, you need to prepare your documents. If you need certificate of coverage, it can take weeks or months. Be careful with that. Or background checks, police checks, marriage certificate. Those things take weeks, not only to obtain the documents, but also to sworn translate them and apostille them. The apostille processes tend to be quite long. If you need apostille services, private apostille services, fast ones in the UK and in the US, you can find on Spainguru.es, personally vetted by me. Then you travel to Spain if you're applying from Spain, and you submit your application. And today I saw a post of someone saying that entered Spain and just applied. It was a record, I think, of application. You can see here in the digital nomad visa. I will share my screen with you guys. Let me see if I can show you. Let me see. Yeah, this one. Landed at Malaga today, 1 hour ago. Landed at Malaga at 13:32. Passport stamped at 13:56. Application submitted at 14:03. Is that a record? I think it is. That's amazing. Really, really amazing. This is how very organized people do to apply, so they don't use any of those 90 days for their DNV application, right? Then you await for resolution. Typically, within 20 business days, you need to get your resolution, okay? But normally it's faster. And an appeal may be filed under administrative silence, okay? So if after 20 days there is no answer, it is you can file an appeal, okay? But generally, it's not recommended to file an appeal, but to apply again, all right? And then, hopefully, you receive your residency, okay? This is the timeline, how it will work, okay? Now, if you're working with individuals rather than with companies, okay, what happens? You can apply, even in this case, okay? But you need to prove that the relationship with those individuals is stable, long-term, and remote, okay? And for this, you will need to include invoices with client names, proof of regular payments, and written confirmation from the client that you are doing the job that you say that you're doing, okay? And everything has to match, as we said. For multiple smaller clients, show consistent income across several months and avoid contracts that suggest that you're doing work for Spanish-based individuals unless clearly allowed, okay? So make sure that you're not over that 20% threshold sourced from Spain, okay? Now, working for NGOs. Contract with NGOs or foundations are also acceptable if they operate like a company, showing consistent activity, legal status, and financial transactions, okay? YT appointments are hard to get. So once you get your visa, you need to obtain your residency permit, okay? And of course, appointments, again, are a huge bottleneck, right? Especially Valencia now is absolutely crazy. There are no appointments, right? So what can you do? After arriving to Spain, you'll need to get your DA card. And you have to think that it can take weeks, sometimes months to get those appointments. You can apply for your DA card depending on where you live. There are certain requirements, okay? But remember that the lack of appointments will not stop your legal status, okay? But it can bring some headaches, okay, with certain services, okay? What you can do, check the appointment site daily, especially early mornings. Be flexible with nearby towns or smaller cities, police stations, okay, within the same province where you live. You can also use a relocation expert or gestor to book on your behalf, or this is the trick, do it from Madrid or Barcelona, because they don't require an empadronamiento, a city hall registration or proof of address where you live, okay? And I have a video, an article about this trick or hack to obtain the TIA that I will share with you. And in urgent cases, you may be able to request a provisional certificate, okay? So you have to start looking for appointments as soon as you enter Spain for your DIA card, right? And here's a how-to guide on how to get your DIA. There you have your QR code, you have the URL at the bottom, okay? And this is the process. And if you're applying for digital nomad visa, there is also a hack, which is using Madrid or Barcelona instead, because they will not require you to prove where you live. So you can watch this video, and also there's the URL of the article that tells you how to do it, okay? How to get your DIA appointment in these cities and get your DIA faster, right? Now let's talk about taxes and Social Security. And I also have a taxes webinar, but this is a, let's say, deeper dive into the digital nomad visa most common cases. Social Security costs. As I said, the first month you will pay between 80 and 100 months. Then you will pay between 300 and 500 euros, more or less, depending on the income of the first year. Some regions can pay you back the first year contributions, okay? And it will include those payments, access to Spanish public healthcare system, subsidized medicines, total treatment of any pre-existing conditions, which private health insurance will probably exclude those. So it's pretty good. It's world-class healthcare. But the best I recommend is to have both. Private, first of all, for immigration status later on, but as you know, to be fully covered, there's advantages and disadvantages on the public system and the private healthcare system. So if you have the money, I personally have both coverages, because some are faster, some are better in different things that you use, okay? You will also get retirement and disability coverage and parental leave and sickness benefits, okay? So it is important that you budget for the Social Security payments alongside with your taxes, right? And here's a little, ballpark figure for illustrative purposes only. And this is not tax advice, but basically, if your income is 30K, you will be paying a total burden of 25% taxes and Social Security. If your income is 60K, total burden 30%, okay? And if you make 100K, between 35 to 40%, okay? This is for ordinary, general regime, okay? We're not talking about Beckham law here. Another question that was asked some months ago, someone who arrived at a certain tax year. So tax year in Spain is from January 1st to December 31st. And in order to become a tax resident in Spain, you need to spend at least 183 days physically in Spain during a certain tax year. Those days don't need to be consecutive, and it's regardless of your immigration status. As a tourist, as a residency holder, doesn't matter. Your physical presence counts. This person entered Spain in September 2024, applied for the DME in October, got in November, and registered as autonomo in December, right? But this person wasn't a tax resident in Spain in 2024 because spent less than 183 days. An expert answer. For tax questions, if you ask 10 different people, you get 10 answers. You're supposed to pay tax in the country where you're physically working. So strictly speaking, on any work performed since September. So an experienced tax advisor, normally because there are variations, okay, will make this person pay for their income during those months as a non-resident in 2024. And then in 2025, as they become a tax resident, they will pay as a tax resident in Spain. Okay. The Spanish progressive tax system for the income tax, okay, and many different taxes, they use progressive brackets. For the income tax, it goes from 19% to 47%. But many people, for example, if you see this table, you will see that the fifth tax bracket from 60K to 300K. So if you're making 100K, it says 45%. So, oh, if I make 100K, do I make 45? Do I have to pay 45%? The truth is not. You will have to pay less, okay? You will have to pay an effective tax rate of 36% approximately. This is for illustrative purposes only, right? And as we mentioned, the fifth tax bracket is 45%, but the way they calculate it is that the first 12,450 euros of that 100,000 taxable income will pay 19%, the next 7,750, 24%, the following 15,000 euros pay 30%. So effectively, you will pay a sort of average or median of those tax rates, therefore making it the calculation 36% effective tax rate for 100K income. And as you can see here, I have calculated, again, for illustrative purposes only, if you make 30K, you will pay an effective tax rate of 24%. If you make 40, 26%. If you make 50, 29%. 60, 30%, 70, 32, and 100K, 36%. Okay, so yes, so as I mentioned, remember the threshold for applying for the Beckham law, okay? This is not a requirement, but have in mind that if you make less than 55K, 60K, it's better to go into the ordinary regime, okay? Because of these reasons, because you have access to allowances and deductions, etc. Therefore, it's going to be probably better to be under the ordinary regime, right? Tax calendar for autonomous. As we mentioned before, you have to pay taxes or file taxes on a quarterly basis apart from the annual taxes, okay, that everyone has filed. But autonomous need to file for quarters, every quarter they need to file income tax. So you pay a 20% income on the income that you made that quarter, okay? And then in the annual income tax, you will pay the difference, okay? Whatever you haven't paid, you will need to pay it, but it's not going to be such a big invoice, right? You will need to file VAT and the annual VAT for the previous year, okay? And then quarter 2, you pay income and VAT. Quarter 3, you pay income and VAT. And the 30th of June, you pay the annual income tax. And then the quarter 4, you pay income and VAT, right? So annual tax obligations, 30%. Sorry, 30th of June, you pay the income tax for the previous year. And then at the beginning of the year, 720 form until March 31st, where you declare your overseas assets in different categories. So you have bank accounts, real estate, cryptocurrency. So if any of those categories go over 50,000 euros, you need to declare everything under that category, okay? So always use a tax advisor or a gestor for doing these filings, 100%, okay? If you want to know more about taxes, you can join my taxes webinar that I have every 15 days. Yesterday I had it, so the recording is on YouTube as well, right? This is also a calculation just for illustrative purposes only, ballpark figures, all right? So more or less, if you make the minimum threshold for this visa, the total deduction between income tax and Social Security will be 31%, going to up to 39% if you make 10K per month. Now let's talk about the visa renewal. So the initial visa approval, if you're applying from outside of Spain, is up to 1 year. If you do it from inside Spain with a indefinite contract, up to 3 years, okay? And of course, if you're applying with a certificate of coverage, it will only include the period of the validity of that certificate of coverage, okay? Which can maximum be 2 years generally, all right? So after 3 years, imagine that you apply for maximum 3 years, the maximum, okay? You can renew for 2 more years, making 5 years and applying for long-term residency possible after all that period, right? So remember, if you have your visa granted from abroad, you enter Spain, you have officially 30 days to apply for your residency card. And then, or if you apply from Spain, you get your residency starting from the visa application, but then you still have to get your residency card. And when you get your residency card, it will show the date in which your visa was granted. So you will need to apply for the renewal whenever that renewal is, okay, after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, immigration years, which are natural years. So if they go from June to June or from March to March, not like the calendar, tax calendar year. The renewals can start 60 days prior to the expiration of the DA card and up to 90 days after the expiration card. Everybody says do it as soon as possible, because if you get denied or rejected or you have any problem, you can apply again and you still have legal stay in Spain. Okay, so always have that in mind. And treat it as an initial application, because you have to be very, very meticulous and organized and prepare the documentation for the renewal with time in advance, okay? So that's important. Another thing to have in mind, especially for some people who also hold passport from specific countries that Spain has agreements with, Those countries are marked in red in the map, and basically it's Latin American countries, Portugal, Andorra, Philippines, and Guinea Equatorial. Those countries, if you're a passport holder of those countries, after legal residence in Spain of 2 years, you can apply for the Spanish citizenship. This is called a fast track. All the other countries, for legal for citizenship by residency, okay, you have to wait 10 years in order to apply for the passport. So be careful and have that in mind. But going back to renewing the visa, okay, because sometimes, you will have your visa validity for up to 3 years, but after 2 years, you can apply for the passport, right? So yeah, in those cases, it could be interesting to have in mind how you determine your strategy for the mid to long term in order to stay in Spain, right? So remember, as I said, renewal is not a formality, okay? It's almost like reapplying. So you will still need to meet all the income thresholds, work and legal requirements, and you have to show updated income proof for the past 6 to 12 months, updated criminal record certificate from Spain. So be careful, be a good person in Spain, because all those records could play against you for the renewal, like driving under the influence could be one. Proof of continued remote work or business activity, confirmation of Spanish address and up-to-date padrón on empadronamiento. And if there are any changes, like you change your employer, etc., you officially have to inform the UGE within 30 days of any changes. I have articles about this. Now, what's different? Okay, so let's talk about common renewal issues. If there are income drops below the required levels, okay, this is an issue. Freelancers fail to show consistent activity, delays with paperwork, or you are submitting expired documents that are no longer valid, new apostille requirements that you need to get in your origin countries, and having gaps in health coverage. Be careful with that. You can't have gaps in health coverage also for the renewals, okay? So be careful. And other things to consider that we mentioned for long-term residency, having guys in residency permit or health coverage can be a problem. And the minimum stay requirements for the long-term residence is something that you need to have in mind. And if you're going to apply for the 2 years fast track, if you're going to use the 2 years fast track for applying for the Spanish citizenship, remember that before applying for the Spanish citizenship, you could not have been outside of Spain more than 90 days per year the last 2 years before you apply for the citizenship. that's the rule. So be careful. Don't be outside of Spain too much, okay? when you apply for all these residencies and passports. So some tips for the smooth renewal: keep documents organized from day one, income statements, invoices, client letters, social security payment records if self-employed. All right, so build your case from day one, okay, from when you have to renew. Monitor your income to ensure you meet the threshold every month, okay? Update your empadronamiento if you move. Be careful with the type of rental contracts that you're going to sign, because not all of them are valid for the empadronamiento. And also, empadronamiento has a 3-month validity. Set reminders to begin the renewal process at the very least 2 months before expiry, okay? And get a new background check. Start gathering documents 4 to 3 months before expiration, and get a new background check from Spain with no pending legal issues, okay? So strong first application doesn't guarantee a smooth renewal. This is something that you need to keep in mind. What do you mean when your A1, what would you do when your certificate of coverage or A1 is expiring? So again, you need to plan ahead for this situation with an experienced immigration lawyer and tax advisor as well, okay? If you relied on a certificate of coverage certificate to avoid Spanish Social Security, be careful because it will expire, okay? Typically covers up to 2 years, okay? But it can be less. And when it expires, you will have 3 options, okay? Main options, not the only ones, but 3 main options. First, apply for a renewal in your home country, which is not always granted. Switch to autonomo and register with Spanish Social Security. You have to be careful with the timing so there are no gaps. Convince your employer to register for Spain Social Security. That will potentially grant you Beckham law eligibility, okay? And potentially could happen that you have to leave Spain temporarily, which may reset the clock, okay, for long-term residency, etc. And also, there are other pathways, okay, a little bit more creative, like arraigo, okay, that you are illegal. You can become illegal and then apply for arraigo after 2 years, okay, of being in Spain. This is also a possibility, but you need to be illegal or irregular, okay. Maybe the word illegal is not the best, but you understand me, without residency status. And then you apply for this. Or modify to a non-lucrative residency, okay, or to a work permit, normal ordinary work permit for a Spanish company or as an entrepreneur, okay, setting up your own business with your own business plan, etc. So there are pathways, right? Some considerations: some UGE renewal rejections have been based on expired A1 coverage, and Spain expects continuity, so it's important that you plan ahead. before your coverage expires, right? So get legal advice. Now let's start to conclude, and before going to the Q&A session, remember that you can use spainguru.es for absolutely free. Join our newsletter, watch the YouTube videos, blog posts, and join the community, extremely important, with a Spanish dedicated digital nomad visa group of more than 17,000 members sharing their experiences every single day. And you can also watch my other 6 webinars, okay, relevant to you: Move to Spain from Vision to Reality, Spanish taxes, okay, those are very relevant. So I highly recommend you joining those webinars, or at least watching the recordings, okay, if you can't join them personally. And remember that I have personally vetted many experts out there, including immigration experts, tax advisors, financial planners, and many other services that you can use, okay? Let's stay in touch. My email is hello@spainguru.es, and you can always send me an email. I always answer my emails and at least point you in the right direction. And remember, the content of this webinar is for information purposes only, and it's no legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulate requirements. Now let's go to the Q&A session. And if you haven't done so, and you have to leave early, I saw a lot of people disconnecting now. Hopefully they left a Trustpilot review, because it's really, really helpful for me. Not only is helpful for me, but also for others to find this content out there. And it also motivates me. It's also nice always to read some motivating and good reviews out there. That makes my day extremely happy, right? So we have here one question. Thank you so much for joining today and asking something. Is there any record option so we can see in again? Yes, of course, I will send you the recording. I will upload it after this. It will take me some time to process the video, and I need to do some small editings. But yeah, you will receive a link to YouTube, and you can watch it for absolutely free as many times as you want. Take screenshots of the slides, exactly that. So yeah, definitely, you can do it. All right. Then let's go for the next question. Edgar, thank you for joining and for asking any questions. So it says, how long are the apostille and strong translated documents valid? So it depends on the document, okay, and it depends on the country that issues them. So generally, either 3 months or 6 months, okay. So you have 2 authorities here: the one that issued them and the Spanish authority, okay, and you have the certificate itself that contains maybe a certain statement that says this document is valid for a certain date, okay. So for example, maybe the authorities in Spain consider that marriage certificates should be valid for 6 months, but then you were married at a certain country that has this certificate that says this is valid for 3 months. So the authorities will read this in the strong translation, and they say, well, it's not 6 months, it's 3 months, because it's stated otherwise in the certificate itself, okay. But yeah, check the official requirements, talk with immigration experts, because each document may be different. So empadronamiento in Spain, for example, is 3 months valid. FBI background check, usually 6 months, usually, okay, but it could be 3 months. ACRO in the UK, normally 6 months. Marriage certificate is 3 to 6 months. Birth certificate is the same, right? But don't quote me on this. I'm not an immigration lawyer. This is not legal advice. These are not official numbers. So it's important that you check that and make your organization accordingly, okay? And the strong translation itself, as far as I understand, it doesn't expire, okay? It is linked to the document that is strong translating, right? So it doesn't come with an expiration date, the strong translation. So next one. Is there any record option? Oh, that's a new, that was, all right, cool. If I am a US citizen and a citizen of a fast track country, do I apply with both? So it's a bit of a tricky question, okay? First of all, well, I have videos about this on Spainguru's YouTube channel where I interview immigration lawyers about this, okay? So I'm not an immigration lawyer, but I can repeat you what they say. First of all, legally, Spain should, what the law says is that Spain will only grant you citizenship by residency, having into account the citizenship that got the residency. So if you got your residency with a US citizenship, you cannot benefit, this is legally, by the 2-year fast track. But, okay, this is the big, huge but that has been applying for the past years, is that foreign office directors and authorities have verbally said in an official meeting, okay, that they are not applying this. And if you obtain your residency with a certain nationality, for example, USA, and then you apply for citizenship with a fast track citizenship, it's okay. And you can benefit from the 2-year fast track. And a lot of people are doing this, okay? Especially with people that apply from consulates, and the consulates are in a certain jurisdiction. For example, in Chicago consulate, or to say something, they will force you to apply with this with an American passport, okay, and not with your 2-year fast track passport, okay. For example, Colombia, Mexico, whatever, okay. And then these people obtain the residency, and after 2 years can apply for the citizenship. But there are some logistical problems. For example, mismatch of names. There is not second last name in the American passport, or there is a little difference in orthography, or whatever, okay. And there are some small headaches because of this, but still you benefit from 2 years fast track. The best you can do, the best, and it's not always possible because you need that the file matches perfectly, is to apply with a 2-year fast track passport directly, because then everything is related to that passport. And then when you apply with the Spanish citizenship, everything matches and there's no friction, okay. This is the long answer, all right. So of course, this is not legal advice. If you plan to apply for the Spanish citizenship, definitely we go with an experienced immigration expert. You can find them on Spainguru.es, okay, and they have done all the ones that I bet on my page. They have done this with many people that benefit from the 2-year fast track. Okay, I hope I have answered you this question, and also watch the videos. Okay, on Spainguru I have like maybe a dozen videos or 20 videos about the 2-year fast track. How long are the apostilles? I don't know what. Okay, sorry, I'm very bad at this. How long are the apostille documents public? All right. Oh, I think we made it to the end of the questions. Guys, thank you so much for joining today. If you haven't done so, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a red button on the top. And I hope that you enjoyed the webinar. I hope that you learned something new today. And I have these webinars every 15 days. I always add new information. I always am in the community, monitoring any news, any stuff that is going on. So I always evolve and iterate the information that I share with you. So it's important to keep updated because things change all the time. You can always contact me at hello@spainguru.es, and I can always try to help and at least point you out in the right direction. Could be blog posts, could be videos, could be professionals that I recommend you, could be communities that you can join. Anything that comes to my mind that can help you, I will always do it. And yeah, I'll be crossing my fingers for your applications and wishing you the best of luck. Stay in touch, and I really appreciate that you joined today. Thank you. Stay in touch, and I will send you the recording very, very soon. Goodbye.